All right, today we're talking about some of the changes that are happening in the world of marketing due to AI and AI agents. My guest today is Cameron Heffernan. He's a longtime expert in the world of marketing and now AI fueled marketing. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of the show, and every week we have smart CEOs and founders and entrepreneurs from a range of different companies. And if you check out the archives, we've got Netflix and Grubhub and Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, lots of great episodes for you to check out. So be sure to do that. And before we get into this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, where we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships by helping them to create a podcast. We have the easy button for any company to launch and run the podcast. We do three things: strategy, accountability, and full execution, and even invented a platform called Podcast Copilot to work alongside that. So if you want to learn more about it, go to our website, rise25.com, or email our team at support@rise25.com. All right. I'm excited to have our guest here today. His name is Cameron Heffernan. He is the founder of Marketing Beyond Borders. It's an agency that specializes in helping international B2B companies to expand and grow in the U.S. market. He's worked across 3 different continents and built a 7-figure marketing agency, and now is really involved in AI and marketing. So we're going to talk about that. And he and I have like a zillion things in common. We just keep on discovering new things we have in common. We grew up in many of the same places. Turns out we went to the same elementary school when we were like 6 years old. So really funny. Lived in the same town, all this kind of stuff. So I'm super excited about it. But Cameron, let's start with, I always like to know what my guests were like as a kid, and if they were selling, gum in school, get busted by the teacher, selling weed in high school, get busted by the principal. You mowed lawns in Bethesda, hot, sweaty, muggy Bethesda, Maryland. Tell me a little bit about young Cameron doing that.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. It is a humid, hot, nasty place. I think now it's even more unbearable with the changes in the climate. It was hard work. I remember I would make maybe $10 an hour, and I was telling my son recently about that, and he's like, that's what you would earn?" He would quizzically look at me like, what was I doing? What was I thinking? But I just always had, been working. I did one of those kids who would buy a bag or two of candy and break it up at school and sell it piece by piece, and just think of, wow, what's the margin going to look like at that? And at that time, it was just, I enjoyed doing it, enjoyed the hustle. I would then invest it in record players and albums and Jolt Cola and all that fun stuff. So it was enjoyable.
Better than baseball cards, which I sunk into, and I still have a bunch of baseball cards in my attic that are worth less than they were back then. And I thought that was my retirement plan. So
I hear you. I miss the same. I literally had them in a shoebox. My kid looked them over, flipped them through them 5 seconds. These are worthless. In the 80s, they overproduced all these.
Yep.
I had like rookie Trammell, rookie Yount, Bo Jackson. No, pennies.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's sad. And then one of the more foundational experiences for you of your childhood was you actually moved around. Another thing we have in common, by the way, my family moved a number of different times. You grew up in Southern California. So first I was born in DC, then went to Southern California, then Massachusetts, then back to Southern California. Every time we moved, basically, it was 3,000 miles away. Big culture shock. What was that? Tell a little bit about that and your stint. You also did a stint in Australia and how that had a lasting impact on you.
Yeah, you don't think of those till later when you're older, but looking back at it now, we see it was formative. And my dad was in education, and he had a sabbatical in New South Wales, Australia. We spent half a year there. When you're 10, that's a long amount of time. It did have an impact on me and my siblings. I was the oldest, so I think it affected me the most. Then we were back in the US, another short sabbatical in the Midwest, and then to the DC area, which I love and consider one of my homes. I've been here 3 or 4 different times as a young adult, now more gray adult, and I do love. We lived later in Europe, but coming back to be in DC was nice because your next door neighbor may be a diplomat at the embassy, and across the street is somebody who is visiting. A visiting scholar, or someone who's here for a couple of years for a federal gig of some type, and it's great, that exposure and that diversity.
Yeah, definitely interesting. What drew you to journalism? I actually grew up in a journalism house. My dad was a print journalist and then a television journalist, and then I pursued it a little bit when I was younger. Was editor of my high school newspaper. What drew you to that career?
Yeah. I was convinced I was going to be, I couldn't make this a starting pitcher. So I was convinced I was going to be a sports journalist. That was my career vision, my path. And I had one internship my senior year at college. I thought, well, at Syracuse, I'll go cover the Orangemen. I'll be interviewing Derek Coleman. Well, he was graduated by then. I'll be interviewing all these guys. We'll be best friends. No, I was covering, high school track and field and field hockey and those kinds of things. So it wasn't quite as glamorous as I expected.
Is it because they
And
have a journalism program there, and so you can't all cover
that's
like the football
That's
team?
part of it too.
Okay,
Yeah, that's part of
yeah,
it. There was a path for that, but it's a long wait to get there,
yeah.
and I just didn't have the patience for it. I'm like, maybe that's not quite for me, but I still had the toolbox, the skill set. My degree was newspaper journalism; doesn't even exist anymore as a major,
Mm,
right? But the skills, I still use those skills all the time, and I think about now I'm applying them to business problems and digging into what's behind this. That's one of the key lessons I try to share with my kids when they ask me a question. To quote the Wire, follow the money. How does this work? Why is this set up like that? Why does the government charge you for taxes? Well, let's unpack that and look at who's paying for things. Where does that money come from? Why does
yeah.
this cost $4.50 and not $2 like it used to?
I'm curious because I didn't become a journalist, but I did become a writer. That was my first profession. I was a writer in the Clinton
Mm,
White House, presidential letters and messages, and then a speechwriter for a governor of California. And I look back now, and I wouldn't advise anyone to become a writer today. I'm just too scared about it. In fact, just yesterday, I felt a little bad about it. I was talking to someone at an event, and he told me that his daughter was really interested in becoming a writer. And I was like, "What are you telling her about that?" Because
mm.
I was like, honestly, I wouldn't advise someone to do that. What are your thoughts? What would you say to a
It's
younger
hard.
person?
Yeah, it's really hard. I would say there was an interview just this morning. It was one of the Wayans brothers was interviewed because there's a new movie coming out that he's in, and he said his secret to success was being that versatile, that hyphen in between those different titles: write, direct, produce, get funding. All those things. You still have to have that writer's or director's brain and mentality and mindset. So I love that muscle. But hell, like I feel optimized the GPTs and the Claude projects that we work with to really get my tone of voice. It's not perfect, but is it 90% there and we can smooth over the rest? Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's good quality and it's a good starting point.
You ended up writing, it looks like about technology and computers and had a couple of different stints there.
Mhm.
Do you see that as being relevant in what you do today? And if so, how so?
I guess I'd say I did have an early startup right around that .com burst, that bubble era. I do understand
What
that
was it? What was the early startup?
I was working in San Francisco. I was working at PC World, and I would interview, and you had different beats that you covered. I would interview people from all the big companies. HP. I covered laptops and printers and stuff. And people would come in, they'd pitch their ideas and their concepts. I'm thinking, they're no smarter or more nor savvy than me. Why don't I do this? Right. And it was at a
Hmm.
time where you really could, 99, 2000, it was very accessible. So I partnered up with a guy I knew who was starting a project management, basically now Microsoft project, but at the time it was quite innovative and
Hmm.
it was real-time project management. And then the bubble burst. It didn't
Mm.
work out. We got acquired at pennies in the dollar, but the learning experience was fabulous.
And to be fair, at that time in 2000, like if you lived in the Bay Area, San Francisco, you kind of had to have a startup. Like it was mandatory. Like they wouldn't let
Oh
you
yeah.
live there if you didn't have a
Oh
startup of
yeah.
some sort, right?
Oh yeah.
People would even make it up, like if they didn't working on a startup. Yeah, sure you are.
That's right.
So you go on from there, and you had a number of different kind of corporate roles. You work at UCSF and Robert Half International. Um, you have this kind of whole career in communications before you end up becoming an entrepreneur. Kind of like me, I was my early 30s, early 30s, I guess, mid 30s when
Mhm.
I started, when I first became an entrepreneur. So what inspired that?
I think it was, we've had the phrase accidental entrepreneur. I think that's me. And it's really more circumstantial. I was in Europe. I was sent over there on a US job from a US company. '08 happened. and was let go. If I was a European person, I'd have more protections, but I didn't have those. So I need to kind of fend for myself and figure something out. I connected with a person, an American person actually in Belgium, and I just decided we could keep doing what we were doing. It was a media marketing agency, but I would come back to the US and start the US office branch operation. So I was still back in Europe every twice a year. And I'm just like, well, this is something to try. Why not give it a shot? And it just kept growing and going from there. I grew it, over seven figures, adding new people to the team. And I loved what I was doing. I love the feel, the autonomy, that the everyday is different kind of aspect. There is no one right solution. Just got to go and figure it out. And I loved that part of it. And then COVID happened. So, a lot changed again.
Do you have, looking back on it, were your clients too concentrated or too vulnerable to the global pandemic?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot in manufacturing, and they were mid-market. Most of my client mix is mid-market, say 5 to 50 million revenue companies. And so they can't just, sit back and wait it out for a few years. And manufacturing in particular, like full lines shut down for months. So that made it harder. And then with that company, they gave me the option to kind of build it back, take a cut and build it back. I'm like, well, I could also just do that all on my own. So why would I not do that? I think that was a leap that I took. Unfortunately, I could take some clients and some work with me. And that's how I kind of got started truly on my own.
So you had been the founder of Mock Media USA then.
Yeah.
So
In this country.
oh, okay. So it was a
Yep.
larger international country and you founded the USA branch of it.
Yeah. And
Okay.
that was also a really good experience for me now, understanding a mid-market company that wants to come into the US and get started from the get-go. I did all the entity setup from an overseas perspective. That's more tactical, but it's also important. It's foundational and you got to get it right. Tax considerations, all those kinds of things that I now work with clients that are having to think of those considerations too.
Yeah. Actually, I skipped over a period of your career. So you actually went and worked abroad before you started Mock Media USA, correct? So you'd
Yeah.
worked in a couple of different countries. So how did that
Mhm.
come about? How did you end up doing that?
Well, let's see. After college, I had a couple years in DC, and I was doing different editorial things and writing and managing content. And I had the bug. And in college, I did a semester abroad, and when I was a kid, I'd always gone to Anglo countries. Just so I think it's a weakness of I don't speak another language at the time, and it's like, well, where can I go and continue this journey? So I went to South Africa. I was in enrolled at college program there, but I didn't last very long. I'm like, I really just want to be in a foreign country and work and travel. So I got a job at a magazine, and he was also an entrepreneur too. He started up his own magazine, a technology magazine, and he was a brilliant guy. His philosophy was, if a provider can't do it as well as I could, I'm going to do it myself. So he even made his own film. He even thought about doing his own printing, like offset printing for a big publication. So that gave me that you can do it yourself. You don't have to just turn to someone else to do it. And then that was a nice development for me, my learning.
And then I think you also worked in Europe and in Brussels. Is that right? Or is that just the company
Yeah.
was headquartered out of there?
No, I was four something years in Belgium,
Hmm.
first in Brussels. Then I was living in the Flemish speaking part, university town called Leuven, and was in Belgium for about 4.5 years. That was another fabulous experience.
Yeah. And so the job brought you there, I guess? Or did you want to
The
move
first
there?
job, yeah, well, I was open to it. I was working in a Fortune 500 staffing company, and it was weird. My boss came in one day. She says, "There's opportunities in Australia and Belgium. You're interested?" And I go, "Sure. Let's see which one plays out." And then, fortunately, I'd taken some French in high school, and that turned out to be very advantageous when I was living in Brussels.
So, okay, so coming back to COVID times, so you have mock media, it goes down because of the client concentration in manufacturing. You decide I'm going to go start this on my own. What was it like striking out on your own and having to do everything not as part of a larger entity?
Yeah, it was a leap of faith. I did have a small partnership in between that did not work out, and that was another learning, heavy cost of learning experience, but you
What's
got
the
to chalk those
lesson?
up.
What's the lesson from that?
Uh, you know, don't take things on faith. Be careful who you trust and when you trust them. And the reason you need to do all those due diligence steps are there for a reason, and don't just blow them off. And I kept losing sight of that. So that was a
Hmm.
key learning. Painful lesson, but now I'm glad that I had it.
Yeah, yeah. So then you
Yep.
ultimately go. So you're kind of like working, stepping your way down from like the starting the U.S. division of a larger company that's outside the U.S. to a partnership to solo on your own, completely on
Yeah.
your own.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was a full on my own. I remember I knew it wasn't going to work out, but I started to set up the steps, you know, that I had to do. And it was a good call. I had an EO, was a mentor I was working with. And we were just talking back and forth, and he goes, well, why don't you just go do it on your own? And I'm like, why the hell didn't I think of that? And he's like, it'll take you a few months to set it up. I'm like, of course, that's what I should do. And,
yeah.
and that is how it played out. And yeah, it was a painful lesson in separation. But when you do that, I feel like, man, I wish I'd done it 3 years earlier. But of course,
Right.
that's not how life works.
So tell me what decisions you made around the structure or the clientele or the services you provided
um,
with Beyond Borders marketing that were deliberately different from what you'd done with Mock Media.
sure. So when I first left that partnership, we had a different brand name, and it was called Your B2B Marketing, and put it together kind of quickly. And I thought that's descriptive. That is what we do. We do B2B marketing, and I could, get the domain and put it together. But as time went by, I realized marketing is becoming ever more commoditized every month, every week. This is pre AI, mind you. So
Hmm.
that even got worse, right? So like what I meant by that was agencies who compete with us can do what we do from Latin America, from South Africa, from other parts of the world at a fraction of the cost. The SaaS tools and the different stack they need to work with is becoming much more affordable and accessible. So I'm in this very, very commoditized space. I've really got to niche down into something different and unique so I can stand out. That's how I came up with this angle, Beyond Borders Marketing. It fit with my past experiences and my personality when I would show the new brand and the site to people. That's like, it's a great idea. And it's you. That's what your life has been about. Um, and I think I really identified with the problems that we're trying to solve, right? So
Hmm.
one common use case is the owner of let's just take a 20 million euro Italian manufacturer that maybe they have some US customers and they have an aspiration to be here, but they don't know how to do it. And they think, well, let's go set up an entity. My nephew did a semester abroad at BU. Let's send him over there. He'll run the subsidiary. How could he fail? It's America. And it doesn't work out because they don't have the support. They don't have the experience here. They don't have the network. They really are not equipped to make it a success. So that's a use case where we can help them.
Hmm.
Another is they hire the head of a US subsidiary, an American person, to run it, but they don't give them the priority, the budget, the support that they need. The spotlight is still on Europe or wherever, India or China, the home office. And that's just a subsidiary out there. Let them do their own thing. Again, America's a big market. What could go wrong? And both of those are recipes for failure.
Yeah. So I thought that the challenge with setting up a company like this would be that you're American, you're not Spanish, or you're not Flemish, or you're not Aussie, you're not South African. And so speaking to those potential clients would be challenging, that they would maybe prefer to hire someone who's from their own home country, speaks their language, or knows their
Mhm.
culture. But it sounds like that is not the same barrier, especially if you're working with someone who's already the head of a US subsidiary. So maybe that's even another American who just happens to be setting up the US subsidiary, kind of like you did,
Mhm.
um, for a European company or something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the case of one of our clients is this to a T. As an American guy, he's up in Chicago. His company is headquartered in Austria, and they had kind of flat, stagnant growth for a few years. And one of the problems was that they didn't have the right person in that seat before him. And he came in, we worked together to really niche down. Again, people think it's a big market there. What could go wrong? But if you try to take on everybody, I have a blog post about this. Be David, not Goliath.
Mm,
Go into niche sectors, go into segments that you can own, can compete in. And they doubled their sales in 2 years, and they 5x their EBITDA projection by doing that, having that strategy of really tight focus. Where can we be a big player in this market?
Mm.
And that playbook, let's just look at what are the other subsidiary heads, the managing director US, the president Americas, that need that approach. And then the whole other crowd is their pre-entry. Like I talking to some companies in the past couple of weeks that have good sales here, 10 to 15 million annual sales, but they run it remotely. They have customers here. They don't have an entity. They don't have staff.
Mm.
It's not going to grow if you don't, grow, put some thought and some
Yeah.
cultivation into it.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned AI a second ago, obviously changing the landscape, as you said. We were talking earlier about Marcus Sheridan, who's a real well-respected speaker, and he's done some work or going out talking, writing books about um, interactive pricing pages and basically tools that are attracting people, which is important given that the landscape of SEO, which has for 20 years now attracted people to find people online, is changing. So can you talk a little bit about that, about the idea of creating tools or an interactive pricing page and the role that plays for businesses today?
Sure. His main thesis, his first book was They Ask, You Answer. And the thesis there is basically the questions that your customers and prospects would be asking and are asking. That should be front and center in all of your content, whether it's a web page, a landing page, a video, whatever. Okay. The problem is most companies are reluctant or hesitant to do that. I'm not going to give away my pricing. I'm not going to give away all the information. My competitors will find it. And his idea flips it on its head. Those are the exact pieces of information your customers, your future customers, your prospects are going to want to know. So taking it a step further, his latest book, Endless Customers, looks at, again, he writes it for marketing agencies and creative agencies and different digital providers like us. You're going to be obsolete in 2 years if you don't do something different. If you just keep cranking out blog posts, which anybody can do with a good GPT and an internet connection now, right? If you just keep cranking that out and LinkedIn posts and tweets, you're going to become obsolete. So you have to look at what's going to bring people back. What value will they come back to and seek? Video, podcasts, interactive calculators. We have our first one that we were launching is called the US Market Growth Potential Calculator. So it's looking at whether you're pre-market entry or a subsidiary, what are the go-to-market gaps that you have? What are the foundational aspects that you're missing to have your business succeed here? And how can you close those? We use it as a piece to kind of get in the door and get people, to pique their interest. But doing it can apply to almost any business, a roofing company and any company that has any residential home improvement kind of project is perfect for that. And those are the things people are asking. People have consumed 20 to 30 pieces of content by the time they actually reach out to sales. No one's calling a salesperson right in the first.
Yeah.
Inform me. No, they're going to go to the website. I read 6 papers. I've watched 2 videos already. If you don't have those assets, you got to go in and make them.
Yeah. And we were talking beforehand about creating AI agents as a marketing tool, which is interesting to me because I would think that is not a marketing function, that is it requires a tech team to implement. Maybe it's become so accessible now and so manageable to create something like that it can now become, your AI agent can become a marketing tool to draw people in. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it can be. There's this debate going on in entrepreneurial circles. Who's going to be the first person to launch a unicorn business, $1 billion business with one person, right? And
who's
I
think Sam Altman has said, and maybe others have said it as well, that it's going to be possible soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would love to hear how that's going to play out and how it's going to work. But I think the concept of I can't be in all these places at once. I can't go be doing 8 podcast interviews and YouTube videos per week. But what if we could make a facsimile of me that has a language library of my information and my knowledge and all the things I've been writing and speaking and producing over the years there. I've trained it. I've taught it. And the quality of the avatars, the visual quality is dramatically improved. The tech stack that I've heard people talk about as effective is 11 Labs for the audio. HeyGen is one of the good options for the video part. And that's, I think, a good key for AI in general. You go to your GPT-5 and ask it to go write War and Peace for me, it's going to be a mess. But if you have it write 2 sentences at a time, and then a chapter, or then a paragraph, and then a couple chapters, it's got to build on it, right? So I think anything you make a project like that, that approach will work. Look at the best in class tool you have to work with, and use that to form, help with your storytelling. Poppy AI is a really good sort of whiteboarding tool for building a storyboard. You use it to go out and research what are the most compelling speakers and content creators in my niche. What are people writing? What's the hook that's going to pull people in to watch the whole video? What are the components? You can train your GPTs and all your favorite authors, and load them up, and it's going to follow Daryl Eves' YouTube formula, Alex Hormozy's $100 million leads, Marcus Sheridan's approaches from his books, and they're all there forming your sort of board of content creators.
Yeah, it's incredible, really. All these different capabilities that are at our fingertips now, that we can have these ideas, and that we can train these agents to act on our behalf, guided by the systems or the processes or the thought leaders that we agree with their approach, and we feel like it's on point for our brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's part's essential. Like, it has to drive what you do. It's got to relate to your core service, core function. Otherwise, why are you doing it? And then two, it does also create an opportunity if you flip it around. Like, I've seen more and more of my clients are doing some postcard mailers and revisiting their trade show strategy, because they're just, and it's some more telemarketing, that, again, don't forget the humanities. You have to have this mix. You have to have all those different touch points, because who you're selling to and who you're working with, different age mix, different life experiences, they're going to resonate in different ways with different people.
I do wonder if people will start to tune out, in a sense, some of the things that they used to value more online, because we're getting to a point where we might not know if something is human or not. Whereas before, we see a video from someone and we listen to it because it's a human sharing some wisdom. But, as this stuff evolves and we're not sure if that's really a person or not, if it will lean us towards distrusting that content in some way. And then we'll revert to things where we know that there's humanity into it, like a trade show, like a networking event, something along those lines, where we don't question its humanity because we know the person's right across from us. We know it's a human.
Yeah, no, like I still love getting together with my team in person, and we all gather around a room and actually can spend time together and work on a real whiteboard with real paper and markers. And that's hugely valuable. And you always, have to have that mix. If your client mix and your provider mix is overseas, it makes it hard to do that, of course. So you really need to have an ability to work all these different components and these different levers into your toolkit.
Yeah, for sure. Cameron, this has been great. And I didn't warn you beforehand because I forgot to, so I apologize, but I'm going to ask this question anyways. This is my last question. I'm a big fan of gratitude, and I'm a big fan of giving our guests a little bit of a space at the end here to thank anyone who's been with them along the way, especially peers or contemporaries. Could be someone through Entrepreneurs Organization, which you and I both belong to. Could be another agency owner, someone like that, but especially someone who's still in your life. And, it goes without saying that we're grateful to our family and our team. So I'd love to hear if there's any peers, contemporaries, or anyone else out there that you would also add to that list.
Oh, wow. Okay. I guess I'll thank my current team. In one case, Bettina, we've been together from the beginning of this current iteration of the company, of the agency. And so she stuck with me through thick and thin, which has been good. And we recently hired a young lady whose name is Jette, and she's German national now, living in the US. And it's great to have that international flair and flavor and remember what it's like in a different part of the world. So I'd like to give a shout out to them and a thanks for working hard.
Cool. All right, Cameron, where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you and follow the work that you do?
Oh, yeah. Beyond Borders Marketing, and our URL is marketingbeyondborders.com.
Excellent. All right, Cameron, thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.